anybody that shifted your paradigm. And we've had guests on the show where afterwards we all sat down and talked for another hour or two, and it just changed our minds or how we thought about certain things. Can you think of a time that happened for you where afterwards you were like, okay, I am totally different after that interview?
All the time, man. I mean, Stephen Shaw, that birth gap thing, the declining birth rate stuff, I'd known that it was a problem for a while, but I didn't realize just how bad it was. So that really opened my eyes. A bunch of conversations with evolutionary psychologists about the imbalance in the dating market at the moment. So this mating crisis.
Explain that, because that's interesting. I've been hearing stuff about this. It's kind of fascinating to me.
Okay, so third rail again. At the moment, there is a massive reduction in the amount of short-term sex that people are having. And also you have declining marriage rates and family rates, right? The number of men reporting no sex in the last year has tripled from 8% to 28% from 2008 to 2018. This is men between the ages of 18 and 30. So short-term sex has declined. This has also declined for women as well, but a little bit more for men. For the first time in history, 50.1% of women are childless at 30. And a report from Reuters says that 45% of prime working age women between 22 and 45 will be single and childless by 2040. For the first time in history, you have 51% of children being born outside of marriage or a civil union. So that's to either single parents or to people that are just in a relationship in the UK. So what that map shows is short-term sex and long-term mating seem to be on the decline, right? We have greater rates of singleness. You think,
which is crazy in a world of Tinder and Facebook and Instagram.
Correct.
It's super fascinating that would be declining.
How is the ease of access to other partners increasing while what actually occurs in the real world seems to be dropping down?
Yeah, and are they connected?
Correct. Yes. So yes, they are. So that's okay, there's something happening here. And I think that every young single person has an idea that, the dating market seems a little bit different now, very different. All of the advice that my parents can give me doesn't really seem to apply anymore. Mm-hmm. So you would think, what is it that could be happening here? Hypergamy is the tendency for women to date what's called up and across. So on average, women want to date a man who is as educated or more educated than them and as employed or more employed than them. So that's wealth levels, right? This harkens back to our ancestral roots, which would be that women want a man who has status and resources. Not a problem at all. Why should women try and settle or not get the best that they can? The issue that you have is that women have been outperforming men in both education and employment for quite a while now. So 2 women for every 1 man will complete a 4-year US college degree by 2030. Women on average between the ages of 21 and 29 earn £1,111 more than men do. So you can see a potential issue here. You have an ever increasing cohort of high performing women that are educated and employed competing for an ever decreasing cohort of ultra high performing men. So this is what I call the tall girl problem. So every guy has a girlfriend who is 6 foot without heels. If you want to wear heels and look nice on a night out, you're stuck dating professional athletes, right? Because your capacity in terms of height has selected for a very small cohort of men that are taller than you. This is the same, but it's in terms of education and employment. So the ability for women to outperform men, remembering when Title IX came in, which was the affirmative action thing that helped women to get into higher education, the percentage point swing was 13% in favor of men. Now, in 2023, it's 15 percentage points in favor of women.
We overcorrected.
So there was no one that thought when Title IX came in that they were going to not only reach parity, but blast straight through it and then overcorrect. Nobody thought that was going to happen. So again, you might say, why is it a bad thing that women have got access to education and employment? It's not. Women needed that for a very long time. The brutal ground truth is that when you match up this increased educational and employment achievement with hypergamy, women who are better educated and better employed reduce down their mating pool. So what's good for their educational and employment achievements is not necessarily good for their dating prospects. And this gets borne out in a ton of data. Relationships where the woman out-earns the man are 50% more likely to end in divorce. Relationships where the woman contributes more than 80% of household income are twice as likely to end in divorce. Relationships where the man is not the primary breadwinner, he is 50% more likely to need to use erectile dysfunction medication. women are 3 times more likely than a man to say that important educational achievement is something that they would judge a partner on. Basically, guys don't care if their partner has got a PhD and earns 100 grand a year, but women would care more, right? And this doesn't need to be huge effects. They are quite large effects, but it only needs to be relatively small effects to nudge people's preferences, okay? So we have this problem in terms of short-term and long-term mating. We have this imbalance in terms of female achievement and male achievement. Male labor force participation has declined by 0.1% every month since 1950. It's gone from 87% to 68%. And by 2040, it'll be 65%. 65% labor force participation amongst men. So you can imagine the dynamic. You have this group of turbo chads at the top, right? The sort of 8 out of 10s and above. They have this wealth of options. The guys that are super wealthy, well-educated, and tall, usually, they have this big, big, big block of girls that they can run through if they choose to. These women sometimes get used and heartbroken by the guys at the top. That causes them to be bitter and resentful of all men. The group of guys at the bottom, the 5 out of 10s and below, are essentially invisible to most of these women.
Angry.
But they get these men aren't worth shit, like, guy, where are all of the good men at? They believe that they're one of these good men, but they are being sort of tarred with the same brush as the guys that used and ran through women. So those women retreat into careers and lean into sort of a boss bitch lifestyle. These men retreat into porn and video games. These guys at the top that do have the turbo chad access, I don't think it's necessarily even that good for them either. Like, having a wealth of options as a man who wants lots of sexual variety doesn't encourage you to be a good man. And many men can't control their sort of desire for sexual variety in the way that they might want to, like in their best moments or whatever. So you end up with both sexes moving further and further apart from each other. The men that retreat into porn and video games are less attractive potential mates to this group of women, and the women that lean into a boss bitch lifestyle make themselves even taller and taller with regards to the tall girl problem. So you end up with a situation in which everybody resents everybody. You see this online with, MGTOW, manosphere, red pill, black pill, incel culture, or on the women's side with boss bitch culture, with pink pill, with female dating strategy. All of these are copes for why can't I find a partner from women that I'm attracted to, or from men, one that's attracted to me.
Wow. And in these apps, these dating apps are showing like that there's a small percentage of men, something like in the single digit percentage of men, who are getting all of the matches, all of the conversations, all of the women who want to talk with them. And then the rest are essentially, as you said, invisible. And these dating apps are showing this. Now, historically, evolutionarily speaking, because I feel like this sounds like a relatively new problem.
It's not the monogamy argument.
Right, because there's arguments that we created monogamy, although now in every successful society, this is what's practiced. But for a lot of human history, that wasn't the case. And you had the man with the resources and the military and the harem. And then you had the peasants, and they just didn't have accessible women. And so the argument is that we created monogamy, and it was a way to keep us peaceful and not killing each other and all that stuff. So it's like we've now this kind of natural tendency where all the women want these few men and all these other guys are invisible. Now it seems like we've amplified that with technology and accessibility. And that's what we're kind of seeing right now. Is it that guys are just giving up and that women are working harder? Is that part of it, or is it more than that?
There's an awful lot going on. So Richard Reeves, guy that wrote Of Boys and Men, really great book, short read. Everybody should check it out if they're interested in this. And he talks about the structural problems. Men are dropping out of education, employment, and family life. Why it's happening, it seems like girls mature more quickly than boys. Everyone knows that. They hit puberty earlier than boys. But there's other things. They're on average more conscientious, which means that when it comes to sitting down and doing homework, they're better. More boys have got ADD. More boys are restless and boisterous when it comes to class. That doesn't engender a very successful education outcome for guys. There are 4 times as many female fighter pilots in the US Air Force as there are male kindergarten teachers by percentage in the US. 2% of kindergarten teachers are men, 8% of fighter pilots are female. I'm happy to have a discussion about whether there should be more female fighter pilots in the US, but there absolutely needs to be more male kindergarten teachers because they understand how to deal with boisterous boys, right?
Oh, I see.
So the monogamy argument is an interesting one. it seems to me that almost all human histories, human civilizations throughout history, ancestrally, were monogamish, right? So this like polygyny argument really only begins to make sense once you've got agricultural revolution, because no one man can accumulate sufficient resources to be able to look after more than just him and his local family. So for anybody that says you do have this like huge polygyny thing going on and everyone's a wannabe Genghis Khan, no, not up until 10,000, 12,000 years ago. And you can tell by there's some genetic records, there's some anthropological data that suggests that it's just not the case. It's not. Most of human history was monogamish, serial monogamy perhaps, but it wasn't this polygyny where it's one man with an entire harem of women. Because how would you, in a normal local tribe, if you don't have tons and tons of resources, how are you not going to stop all of the other men just tearing you apart?